How to build a successful team of people to accomplish some purpose. If you've got something in mind, whether it's enterprise or organization or whether it's church or whether it's sports, doesn't matter what it is. If you want to find good people, here's part of the challenge in finding a successful team of people. To put together a good team, I've got a checklist for you. It's got 4 parts to it. Here's number 1, history. It's not a bad idea to check history. Somebody's qualifications to do the job. Just take a look. Now, we can't go into too much detail on any one of these, but let me just give you the list. Number 2, check interest. If somebody's interested, they're probably a good prospect. Now, sometimes people can fake their interest. But if you've been a leader for a while, you can be a pretty good judge of whether or not somebody is faking you out on what we call true interest. And you just have to have some face-to-face conversation just to check out to the best of your ability. You won't hit it every time, but you can get pretty good at checking what we call true interest. A group came to Jesus one day and said, "We wish to be disciples." He said, "Gentlemen, you've put your story on the wrong man." They said, "Wow." He said, "Unfortunately, I can read your heart." They said, "Oh." They didn't want to be disciples. They had all kinds of trickery in mind. But he picked up on it right away. And he wasn't faked out by the "we wish to be." Now, you might not get quite this good at reading hearts, but I'm telling you, you can get pretty good as a leader in judging somebody's what we call true interest. Here's the 3rd part of the checklist. Check response. Response tells you a lot about someone's integrity and character and interest and skill. If someone says, "You have to get there how early?" "You have to stay how late?" "The break is only 10 minutes. 2 evenings a week? Saturdays?" That give you any clues? These are called clues, right? Don't go past these clues. Clues on what we call response. A person's response quickly illustrates their philosophy. We only respond based on what we know, and our attitude and philosophy is so bound up. And we might, be clever for a while, but pretty soon response is going to come truly from our philosophy. And if there's any great errors there in philosophy and attitude, here's one of the places where it shows up in response. And here's the last piece of the checklist in putting together a good team. Check results. Finally, the name of the game is results. How else are we going to judge? That's the final judge. Results. It is the name of the game. Results must soon match quality. You might have a nice guy, but finally you got to have results. Nice don't get it. Now there's 2 parts to results. Here it is. Number 1, activity results. Sometimes we don't ask for productivity right away. All we ask for first is activity. Now it's pretty easy to check activity. If you joined a sales organization and you're supposed to make 10 calls first week, it's pretty simple on Friday, right? Pretty simple on Friday. Say, "John, how many calls did you make?" John says, "Well," you say, "John, well won't fit in my little box here." And John starts on a story. And you say, "John, the reason I made this box so small is so a story won't fit. I just need an activity number from 1 to 10. Now, if the results on activity first week are not good, those have got to be signals, clues. Now, you might try another week, but you got to be the judge, right? How far you go in putting a team together with somebody's lack of precise activity. Now, finally, here's the last part, productivity. Finally, the tree must have figs. Finally. The ultimate test of a quality team is productivity. Fruit, evidence, measurable progress in reasonable time. Now, as a leader, you've got to learn to measure results and productivity and activity. And here's part of the skill of leadership. Be upfront in team building with what you expect. Don't let the surprises come later. Put it up front. God was very upfront. Old Testament. God says, if you move toward me, I move toward you. See, that's very upfront. That's called making it fairly clear. You take a step, I step. Now, I only ask you to take human steps. I take God steps. You take human steps. But you got to take a step. Because here's how else it reads. You don't move, I don't move. You say, well, that's arbitrary. Well, when you're God, you can set it up that way. When you get your planet, you can set it up however you want to. This one is set up. I got a good philosophical statement for you. Life was designed to respond, to deserve, not to need. On this planet, it doesn't read, if you need, you will reap. No, it reads, if you plant, you will reap. You say, well, I really need to reap. Then you really need to plant. Life wasn't designed for the needers. Life was designed for the planters. Life doesn't respond to what we need. Life responds to what we deserve by activity, belief, faith, action, movement. You gotta take a step. So one of the things to make clear when you're bringing somebody on board is say, Mary, if you step, we do these things. If you take 3 steps, we go this, this, and this, and this. And if you do this, we do all of this. But if you don't move, we don't move. It's very important to make it clear. Why? Because everybody needs to pay. Everybody needs to pay. Even if the payment is only token, it has to be paid. Because life responds to deserve, not need. Fascinating study. Here's one of the clues to leadership. Learn to work with the people who deserve it, not the people who need it. Now, we're talking team building now. We're talking winning a championship. We're talking putting together an enterprise. And the key to leadership is teach people how to deserve it. Teach them how to take the steps. Teach them how to make the moves. And we only ask for token moves. We only ask for limited activity. We only ask for steps in the right direction. But without the steps, we have no promise. So this is one of the most important things you can do for children, is to teach them how to deserve good things, how to deserve the favors, right? You got to pay the price. Price is how you deserve it. Here's the next key. In building a successful team, you must learn when you've got too many. It's a simple story. It comes from the Bible. Now, being an amateur, you sort of have to take my way of putting it, but good Lord said, just take my word for it. You got too many. And Gideon said, well, what should I do? And the good Lord said, try this. Get the 32,000 troops together and give them your last final ringing speech. We're off to fight the Midianite. And he said, when you finish the speech, finish it like this. Now then, that we're off to fight, if there's anybody here that's afraid and you think we're about to lose this battle upcoming with the Midianites, you can be excused this time, go home, can't use you this time. Gideon said, clever, should have thought of that myself. Gets the 32,000 troops together, gets up, gives his last ringing speech and says, we're off to fight, but if there's anybody here who thinks we're going to lose, you can be excused this time. You can just go home. We're just going to take what's left. And Gideon waits. And sure enough, some went home, and the number was 22,000. Gideon says, wow. Hey, if you've got 32,000 and 22,000 think you're going to lose, guess what? You're going to lose. You got too many. Here's the key to leadership. In haste, it's possible to recruit losers. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's possible. You say, well, why is that? This is called one of those things. When you're moving, no telling who you collect, right? So here's part of the test, you know. Who thinks we're going to lose? You can be excused this time. So Gideon's got 10,000 left. He says, no problem, we'll do it with 10,000. Good Lord says, well, you still got too many. Gideon says, well, what now? And the good Lord says, try this. March the 10,000 till they're hot and thirsty down by the river, and those that are careless just drop their shield and spear and dive in the water and start drinking. You can't use them. They're too careless. But the ones that keep the spear and the shield and lap the water like a dog, keep looking and alert, those are the ones because they're trained and ready to go. Gideon said clever. And he marches the 10,000 till they're hot and thirsty down by the river. Sure enough, when he gets to the river, some are hot and careless, and they just throw down their spear and shield and jump in the water. And the number was 9,700. Key to leadership. In haste, it's possible to recruit the careless. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's inevitable. This is called one of those things. Now, if you've got an important battle, you got to know who's careless. And this was part of the test. So Gideon says, you 9,700, home. And he sent them home, dripping home. Now he's got 300 left. Gideon said, no problem. From 32,000 to 300, Gideon is still willing to try it. We call that courageous leadership. You've got to read the story. Don't have time to give you the whole scenario, but it was a fascinating story. With 300, the battle plan was the most strange, unusual battle plan ever designed. But he won the day, chased off the Midianites. Gideon becomes the military Jewish hero of the day. His story provided for us to read one more time, which says, as a leader, remember, there are times when you may have too many. This is called inevitable. Next, don't linger too long. If you've got a job to do, sometimes you have to be fairly swift in your analysis of who will and who won't and who can and who can't. Jesus said, in putting the Christian philosophy to work, two of you take a city, and you two take a city, and you two take a city, and walk into the city and tell the story. And if they respond fairly soon, stay, and if they don't respond fairly soon, don't stay. He advised them to leave the city that didn't respond fairly soon. So you got to put some time. Now, you got to be a judge of how much time you give someone to respond or something to respond. This is part of the unusual skill of leadership, learning time dimensions, how much time to give. But Jesus was fairly clear, said, don't stay too long. If the city doesn't buy the story, he said, leave. And I think the reason was fairly clear. There are too many cities that will to linger with those who won't. It's called the law of averages. Play the law of averages. Don't stay too long. Now, he gave them some other fascinating instructions that who knows what it all meant. He said, when you walk out of one of these cities that doesn't buy the story, wipe off your shoes. Whatever that meant in those days, no telling what that meant. If you walked out of somebody's house and wiped off your shoes, I mean, no telling what that meant. There's probably some modern gestures that are just as good, but, who knows? I don't know. I'm an amateur on this stuff. So. But what it does mean, leaders must have a sense of timing. We call it measurable progress. You've got to be smart enough to measure progress, and you've got to also be smart enough to understand reasonable time. We can't be unreasonable with time. The enterprise may be lost for lingering too long and not understanding the law of averages.
để quên khi cơn mưa đêm lại về. Em để quên lời thề và ta như đông chìm sâu, không còn mới em anh nhạt màu. Em chỉ cần mơ đâu em chỉ còn là những cơn mưa vô giá cho bên mơ em không mơ anh. Anh một đêm mơ chỉ cho bên em không được cơn nhớ và chỉ có em không muốn nhớ và người ta bên nhau như ngã tớ. Muốn nhớ về say em chỉ có mấy em ở đây và anh như muốn chết đi nhưng không muốn em mơ mày. Tình yêu làm cho ta đau đầu không em như nằm hâm mộ. Anh như đeo mong cầu và mưa bên em ngô sầu. Chắc có mai mai em mơ chỉ có bên em nhưng đừng có mơ. Mà đã ra em muốn bên ai anh không mong gì hơn, chỉ mong em sẽ ở đây ôm anh thật gần. Anh chỉ mong đôi ta được có nhau mà đừng em đâu anh có em. Một đêm bên anh có em ta sẽ trao nhau môi hôn thật sâu ôm anh.
Welcome to my party, we're just getting started. A life is a dream or a nightmare scarring. Hand me a drink cause I think I'm going all in. Get me a shrink who can catch me when I'm falling. Cover up my scars, flip the handlebars. Crashing in my car, wake up in a bar. I'll be a superstar, just on my avatar. This world is so bizarre, empty out the reservoir. Yeah, I'm taking 6 shots, yeah, straight to the face. And I wanna get lost, I'm sick of this place. Don't know how to stop when I'm feeling this way. So I'm taking 6 shots till I'm feeling okay. I think I'm going crazy, don't think I'll get home safe. So I'm taking 6 shots, all straight to the face. I'm taking 6 shots, are you coming with me? I'm taking 6 shots, yeah, straight to the face. And I wanna get lost, I'm sick of this place. Don't know how to stop when I'm feeling this way. So I'm taking 6 shots till I'm feeling okay. I think I'm going crazy, don't think I'll get home safe. So I'm taking 6 shots, all straight to the face. I'm taking 6 shots, are you coming with me? Sometimes you need to let loose, grab juice, get goose, tattoos, taboos, get screwed. Loosen up, buttercup, all those hate comments will never make you feel enough. We're all adequate graduates, heart full of calluses, but we know calculus. Damn, ain't that fabulous? Can't wait to apply all those mathematicus. But we can't.
We'll be right back.